afternoon, everyone. Bonjour tout le monde et bienvenue à la session d'information. Welcome, everyone, to the Dementia Society of Ottawa and Renfrew County webinar this evening. Women's Mind Health Matters. Let's talk post-menopause with dementia risk and why nutrition matters. Our presenter this evening will be Kelly Beaton, with Registered Holistic Nutritionist and founder of eatwellbewell. It is now my honor to acknowledge the land upon which we work, play. The Dementia Society of Ottawa and Renfrew County acknowledges the privilege to be operating on the unceded traditional territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe. The people of the Anishinaabe Algonquin Nation have lived on this territory for millennia. Their culture and presence have nurtured and continue to nurture this land. The Dementia Society honors all First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples and their valuable past and present contributions to this land. I am Monique Doolittle-Romas, and I am the new CEO of the Dementia Society, and it is such a privilege to be part of this amazing team and to provide programs and services for caregivers and people living with dementia. Also, we take our role seriously to ensure that you have access to important information, which is why we're offering this webinar this evening. Let me tell you a little bit more about the Dementia Society. We provide compassionate support, tailored coaching, and practical education for everyone impacted by dementia while building a dementia-inclusive community. For more than 40 years, we have helped many thousands of caregivers and loved ones to navigate dementia and dementia care, thanks to the generous support of donors and our community and some funding from Ontario Health. As dementia numbers increase, more programs are required, as well as funding to deliver them. Thank you for your support. Thank you for your participation. You can find out more at dementiahelp.ca. Donate. About our process today. This webinar is being live cast on Facebook and recorded for future on-demand viewing. Everyone but our speakers and event coordinators are muted today. We encourage participants to post questions in the chat function of either the Zoom web application or Facebook comments, and we will do our best to answer all of the questions at the end of the webinar. For your own privacy, please do not share personal health information. Any medical information shared in this webinar is an information resource only and not to be used or relied upon for any diagnostic or treatment purposes. This information should not be used as a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Why are we offering webinars on Women's Mind Matters? We launched this initiative to explore the impacts of dementia on women, and it has been at the forefront of raising awareness for women's brain health and risks of dementia. This series aims to sensitize audiences, such as yourselves, to the risks of dementia inherent to women and to share hopeful news and practical tips about preventative measures to reduce the risk of 40% of dementias. Our online audience has shown interest during the past webinars on a webinar that focused on nutrition and dementia prevention. Now, enough of my speaking. It is now my pleasure and honor to introduce and turn over this evening's presentation to our friend, Kelly Beaton. Kelly, over to you.
Thank you so much, Monique. I want to thank you and the incredible team at the Dementia Society of Ottawa and Renfrew County for this wonderful opportunity. I see this as just a small way of me giving back to this society that has given so much to me and my sister as we cared for my mom who suffered from vascular dementia. So this is such an honor for me to join you tonight. I start with a disclaimer, primarily just to reiterate what Monique has said, that the information that will be shared with you this evening is self-education and does not provide any specific advice to individuals. As well, all individuals or people attending this evening are encouraged to seek diagnosis and treatment directly from their medical doctor or licensed primary care practitioner. With that being said, I wanted to just share with you a little bit of what it is to be a registered holistic nutritionist, and specifically the 5 principles by which I operate. The first is the point of education. That is the clear goal of why I'm a holistic nutritionist, is to ensure that the benefits of nutrition, specifically that the natural, alive, good quality food, is important not just for our physical health, but for our mental and emotional health. I also work in collaboration and as complement to any medical advice or given to you from either a pharmacist or a doctor. All the information that I'll be sharing with you is based in scientific research. I recognize the importance that we are all bio-individual, and so what may work for someone may not work for someone else. And most importantly, that our health, our physical health, is a function not just of the physical, but of the mental and the emotional health of our bodies, and that we all strive to seek balance in our daily pursuits. Next slide, please. So a little bit about me. It has not been a straightforward journey to becoming a registered holistic nutritionist. In fact, I held senior positions in both the federal and public sectors for over a quarter of a century. But I think it was in the caregiving role that my sister and I shared with our mom that really reminded me about the importance of health, and specifically brain health, and which was my motivator to become a holistic nutritionist in 2022. And in 2023, I completed a series of advanced studies that focused on nutrition and cognitive health. And from there, I founded my company, eatwellbewell, which is a nutrition coaching service that specializes in aging brain health, both for the individuals and for corporate clients. And throughout all of this, I am a passionate advocate how in the support of holistic nutrition awareness to ensure that we have a supportive aging society. Next slide, please. So tonight's discussion will be primarily positioned into 3 parts. And the first part is going to look at background and definitions of what is menopause and specifically post-menopause, and how is that state of health affecting our risk for dementia. The second part of this presentation will look at important research that has demonstrated a relationship between the postmenopausal brain health and the risks for dementia, and how modifiable risks can be addressed. And the third part, which is really, I think, the crux, is what I call the postmenopausal plan, which is a balance of nutrition and lifestyle tips to help us make our brains as resilient as possible. Next slide, please. So let's start with what is menopause. It is, I think, most important to underline and underscore that it is part of the natural aging process. On average, the life expectancy for Canadian women is 84 years. And it's interesting to note that approximately 85% of those 84 years, women are in some form of a fluctuation of a hormone change. And that starts with menstruation, which is also then followed by pregnancy in some instances, perimenopause, menopause, and then postmenopause. The length of perimenopause or the onset of perimenopause is defined by both your genetic background, but also as well as what we call environmental factors. And this can include stress, diet, lifestyle, and exposure to toxins in the environment. Most women have a perimenopause onset in their mid to late 30s or early 40s, and it can last anywhere between 2 and 10 years. It's important to note that the actual menopause in the various phases of change is only marked by a 12-month period where the woman does not have a menstrual period. So it is an uninterrupted break from having menstruation. And at the conclusion of the menopause, the women will then become, or what they term, in a postmenopausal state that will continue until their death. Next slide, please. So the postmenopausal state is primarily a function of what we refer to as a major endocrine disruption. And when I mean endocrine, it's simply meant hormonal change. And specifically, it is the hormones that function primarily for reproductive purposes, and they are estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone. They change both in the amount that is being produced by the body, and they also change in their configuration. The key thing to note for postmenopausal health is that it is often a carryover of a number of effects that women start to experience during perimenopause. So that includes mood changes. It includes sometimes what they often call foggy brain or brain fog. It includes changes in your skin and hair and nail texture. And for many women, it involves hot flashes. It also includes interrupted or disruptive sleep pattern and as well weight gain. Next slide, please. But a key function before we get into the research is that of estrogen. And increasingly, a number of studies are examining why, as in the case of Canadians, where there's 2/3 of Canadians who do suffer from some form of dementia disease, are women. So there's two possible hypotheses. One is that women live longer than men, and as such, have a higher risk of being affected by what they call maybe an age-specific related diseases. And the second is the hormonal changes that women face. So I just want to talk quickly about the role of estrogen. Estrogen is what often is referred to as an umbrella term, as there are three types of estrogen that a woman experiences in the course of her life. The first is called E1, which is called estrone. The second is E2, estradiol, and the third is E3, and it's called estrol. E3, estrol, is the estrogen that's produced during pregnancy, and it's only produced during that period of time. But what they call the more potent or more powerful of the other two estrogens, estradiol, is the estrogen that declines once you have completed menopause. The estrogen estrone continues to be produced in the ovaries, but at a lower amount. But the reason I wanted to raise this with you is to understand that, your body continues to produce hormones, but not the same kind, and is certainly not in the same volume. And so it is this change in estradiol that researchers are now exploring as it relates to the decline and or change in brain health. And there's two pieces of information that I found very interesting was that this decline has made, there's some suggestion that it has altered either the structure and or function of women's brains as we age. And the other is interesting is that even in the suggestion of people for reducing the risk of Alzheimer's disease, there has been work done around the introduction of hormonal replacement therapy, which is effectively reintroducing estradiol into women to see what effects it may have on whether or not it is preventative or not. And the research is underway, and some of the findings are quite interesting. Next slide, please. And one of the most phenomenal and I would say important studies is the Lancet study, and Monique referred to it in her opening slide as this study, which was created by a very well-respected UK-based medical journal in 2017, identified initially 9 risk factors that may affect and or if addressed can prevent or delay the onset of 40% of dementias. The study was updated in 2020 when they added 3 new factors. So the factors are listed there, and I'll cite them quite quickly. It's less education, hypertension, which refers to high blood pressure, hearing impairment, smoking, obesity, depression, physical inactivity, diabetes, infrequent social contact, excessive alcohol consumption, head injury, and air pollution. And just note the latter 3 were the 3 most recent risk factors identified in 2020. But what I find very inspiring from this study is their conclusion, which is that it is never too late or too early to begin to address and implement a risk mitigation strategy to help minimize the risk of incurring or reducing any form of dementias. And this is particularly important for women as we are in menopause or as we are in postmenopause. And there's 3 things that potentially can help us to further minimize those risks. Hormone therapy is one of them, and I won't be specifically discussing that, but that's one venue. Second is the issue around exercise and consistent exercise. And third is our diet and what I like to define our healthy diet. And that's where I'd like us to go this evening and look at what are the factors that we can make changes in to improve our brain's resilience. Next slide, please. So I'm going to start with what foods that we currently eat that are probably the foods that we should be avoiding. As many of us can eat what I call a standard North American diet, and the acronym is quite appropriate, is often referred to as the SAD diet. Elements of alcohol, processed and refined foods, sugar, and salt frame that diet. And those four elements specifically have really dramatic consequences on our brain's health and resilience. Alcohol, as you may know, is a depressant, and being a depressant, it literally depresses the function of the brain, specifically its communication function, when alcohol is ingested, and it makes it harder for the brain's signaling to be as efficient and effective as it could be. Processed and refined foods, which unfortunately take up most of the real estate in our grocery store, have huge amounts of chemicals as well as high amounts of both sugar and salt. And these foods in and of themselves have chemicals that trigger for menopausal and postmenopausal women hot flashes, sleep disruption, and also anxiety and obesity. Sugar is a whole conversation we can have around sugar, but sugar in and of itself, we ingest way more than we actually need. I mean, sugar is a basic form of glucose. Glucose is something that we need, our brain and our body, to have energy to move, but our intake is in excess of the actual calories that we spend every day. And as a consequence, the glucose builds up in our system. And one of the major results has been a rise in type 2 diabetes and as well as insulin resistance and obesity in the North American environment. And similarly for salt, salt also inhabits most foods that are bought, processed and or refined. Salt has a negative relationship to our blood pressure as we age, and high blood pressure also has a relationship to cardiovascular disease. It's kind of like a circle, and cardiovascular disease has a relationship to our brain health. There's been an interesting study in 2006 by the American Journal of Medicine, which indicated that changes in ovarian hormones, notably estrogen and progesterone, make postmenopausal women more sensitive to salt. So even the little amount of salt can create a higher impact in their bodies. Next slide, please. So let's talk about what are the foods and what are the nutrients that we need to really support our brain health. So I'm going to start with, I don't like the word diet per se, but I will call meal plans, but they're often referred to as diet. And that is the foundation is the Mediterranean diet or the MIND diet, which is a combination of the Mediterranean diet plus the DASH diet. The DASH diet is a diet that's specific to help cardiovascular and reduce blood pressure, and what I also refer to as the Blue Zone longevity diet. And I just want to cite that researchers have found that these diets have a whole prioritization of fruits and vegetables, whole grains, lean proteins, and healthy fats, which have been documented to have a reduction in the risk of dementias for both men and women. I just want to make sure everybody understands that. So it's not just one food, but it's a complement of foods that really can help, even if we start today, changing our diet in the smallest way, make our brains more resilient. And the reason is that the diets, the plans, the diets themselves have protective functions, which I'll articulate in a moment, that help even for people who may have a genetic disposition towards Alzheimer's disease. And what was very fascinating is a recent study also demonstrated that for people who even have Alzheimer's or vascular dementia or other dementias, if they change their diet while they have experienced the diseases, it may slow down the progression of the disease, which is something that I think everyone who is a caregiver would want for the person that they're caring. Next slide, please. So I'm going to be talking about macronutrients, and I talk about macronutrients, I'm talking specifically about proteins, I'm talking about carbohydrates, and I'm also talking about fats. So that's what we call our macronutrients. And so let's start with some of the most important ones. And so these are going to be some fats. Unsaturated fat is critical to brain health. The brain is composed, about 60% of it is fat, and it needs fat to operate well. Unsaturated fats refer primarily to liquid fats, and they are olive oil, avocado oil, and sunflower oils. You can also find saturated, unsaturated fat in fatty fish. So these are core food elements that you will find in the Mediterranean and or the Blue Zone diet. The next is to eat fresh as much as possible, organic whenever possible, in season, and I would also add local. By eating in these 3, 4 categories, it's easier to retain the nutrients in the foods than depending on foods that are exported and travel great distance. By the time these foods often arrive in our grocery store, they are nutrient deficient. So it's just something to bear in mind, and to see the array of foods that we can have, even if we're living in a cold climate part of the world like Canada, where in the winter it's very hard to have what I would call vitamin-based foods, such as some fruits and vegetables. And the recommendation there is to go as much as possible to have frozen vegetables and fruits when not in season. The next is to eat a plant-based meal, and that is really at the heart of the Mediterranean diet and the Blue Zone diet. And this is incredibly important for women in postmenopausal stage of your life, because you're looking to have a diet that's rich in phytoestrogens. And phytoestrogens are chemicals found in plants that are literally mimic the estrogen in our bodies. So this is something that would be really helpful to in this period of time where estrogen is going down. By having foods that have phytoestrogens is a good way of trying to kind of attempt to rebalance the estrogen loss that you may be experiencing. And you can find them in whole grains, flaxseed, chickpeas, and legumes. Many people say to me, Kelly, what are legumes? Legumes are the plants of both peas, lentil, and beans, and pulses, which is another reference as many people use. Those are the edible seeds, which is the actual bean, legume, and lentil. Omega-3 foods. This is the essential fatty acids that our brain needs, as well as it's critical for our overall body health and different body systems. And as many studies have demonstrated, high levels of omega-3 are associated with being incredibly preventative in some instances for the risk of dementias and Alzheimer's disease. The best source of omega-3 are through cold water fish, and there's several listed there. As well, you can find that in flax seeds, chia seeds, walnuts, and in soybeans. I can't say enough about hydration, especially for women. The majority of us spend our day dehydrated, and dehydration often masks in the form of hunger. So there's many times many people will say, oh, around 3:30, I get really famished. Well, it's probably more that you're very thirsty. And the brain is also one of the key organs that use a lot of water. So when you are dehydrated, you're effectively dehydrating your brain in a sense. And that's why a lot of people will experience foggy brain towards the end of the day. There's also an amazing study that demonstrates that clearly, where women who are not having sufficient hydration during the day had more challenge in completing cognitive tests. By and large, most adults, women should have anywhere between 6 and 8 cups of filtered water a day. That does not include your coffees or any other beverages that you may be drinking. Next slide, please. So we also want to look at eating foods that are rich in antioxidants. And here are 2 key antioxidants, particularly for postmenopausal women: vitamin E and vitamin C. So vitamin E is a fat-soluble vitamin. So this is a vitamin that needs to attach itself or work with fat to be well absorbed into your body. Best source of vitamin E is leafy greens. So your kales and your dark green spinach, as well as you have it in wheat germ and almonds, some nuts, and bell peppers are also a very high source of vitamin E. And I made a reference to one particular part of vitamin E. It's an antioxidant called alpha tocopherol, and it is specifically an antioxidant that helps address oxidization in the body. And so it helps reduce that and helps primarily in the brain reduce some of that oxidation that occurs as we age. And vitamin C is a water-soluble vitamin, and that means that it can be dissolved in water. So it is eliminated when you have elimination, and it is critical. Vitamin C affects a number of body systems, including your cardiovascular, your brain, your skin. And so there's a number of studies now about and your immune system, and most importantly, it is a number of studies looking at the protective function that vitamin C has for our overall brain health. And as you can see, there's an assorted array of vegetables and fruits that are great and for vitamin C. The next is magnesium-rich food. So magnesium is a critical mineral that we need for our brain health. It's also critical for our gut motility and as well for our sleep. It has a number of important partnership relationships, including our bone health. As we age, women's bones tend to be adversely affected by the decline in estrogen, and often women may experience osteopenia or osteoporosis. But in both cases, magnesium in combination with calcium and vitamin D would be a very benefiting combination of nutrients to support our bone and brain health. Good thing is that magnesium is found in an array of foods, including dark chocolate, because I know a lot of people say, what happens to dark, can I eat chocolate? And the answer is yes, but obviously in moderation, as well as a number of important seeds like pumpkin and flax and chia and whole grains. So it's a lot of wonderful sources of foods to get magnesium from. Next slide, please. Lots of people want to talk about caffeine, and people are very worried about losing their chance to have a cup of coffee. And the point is that caffeine is a stimulant. It stimulates your brain. There is nothing really wrong. I mean, if you have other health conditions, maybe caffeine may not be appropriate, but a 1 or 2 cup of coffee a day, most preferably before 2 p.m., is seen to be a positive in some instance for helping your brain remain stimulated. And there has been some suggestion that it may decrease the risk of Alzheimer's disease as well, although it's still to be explored. And another thing is, caffeine is found in chocolate, it's found in tea. So that's something to be also aware of. It's not just found in your coffee, and it's found in other teas that are such as green tea as well. I'd like to just take a moment to talk about a really important relationship, and that's called the gut-brain axis. So as you may know, your brain and your digestive system are in constant communication from the moment we are born. And this constant communication is critical to our overall health. And imbalances, particularly as it relates to our digestive and intestinal health, does create imbalances in our brain health. And what is very fascinating is that our microbiome, which is often referred to as bacterial diversity, contains over 100 trillion bacteria. It's inside our body that continues to grow and basically ensure our health. The bacteria plays a very protective function. So when there is a imbalance in that bacteria diversity or a decrease, as it is suggested by some research, there may be a relationship to our Alzheimer's disease or people's risk for Alzheimer's disease. So how do we ensure that our microbiome is well maintained? Well, there's 2 ways. The first is through the intake of probiotics. Now, probiotics are foods and or beverages that are bacteria-based, such as yogurt, kefir, sauerkraut, tempeh, miso, and kimchi and pickles. Anything that has been fermented is a benefit to our gut health. And then we also want to eat prebiotics to feed the bacteria that is inside our digestive system. And so those are wonderful foods like garlic and onions and leeks, asparagus, oats, and bananas. And one thing you may have noted that there are several foods that have been listed that have properties that touch on a number of the key nutrients that we've been discussing. Next slide, please. So before we talk about supplementation, I wanted to just make an important caveat that anytime you're thinking about taking a supplement, it's critical that you have a conversation with your pharmacist and or your doctor. Specifically, as we age, we are often taking other medications, and it's important to make sure that there is no counterindication, so that by taking a supplement, that it would minimize or negatively affect the medication you're on. So I just want to make sure we all work from that premise, and that includes all the over-the-counter supplements that we can easily purchase. But when I'm looking at someone who's postmenopausal, I really want to make sure they're trying to get as much of the minerals and nutrients that we need that we may not be able to get just through food. So one of the more, I guess, effective and both in terms of cost and efficiency is to get an age-related specific multivitamin for women. And try to ensure that as you've in your menopause and postmenopause, that these multivitamins do not have any iron, or if they do have iron, it's very little. Once women have stopped menstruating, unless they have a pre-existing condition, there is no need to increase their intake for iron, as we would need during our period of time where we are menstruating. The other supplement would be magnesium. As I just mentioned a few moments ago, magnesium does a number of important tasks to support our brain, heart, and bone health. And it also has a positive correlation for sleep, especially for postmenopausal women who are experiencing sleep disruption. Magnesium is a good way to look at how we can help our brains equally be able to shift and minimize the disruption of our sleep. Well, I've mentioned omega-3s. Omega-3 fatty acids are also an important supplement for women as we age for a number of the reasons I mentioned. And it also has an incredibly strong relationship to our cognitive function. I'd like to talk about the B vitamins. They're often marketed as B complex. So these are vitamins B1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 9, and 12. These are an array of B vitamins that are critical to women's health, especially I would say any person as we age, because our body's capacity to metabolize reduces as we age, and we often may experience deficiencies in some of those vitamins, and such as I noted B12 here, which is really something we need to help our processing in our digestive and intestinal systems, which is correlated, as I also said, to our brain health. And I'd add one or two more that are not listed there, and that is primarily for women who are concerned or experiencing bone health. I would think about calcium as well as vitamin D. Next slide, please. So we've looked at some foods, we've looked at some supplements. Now I'd like to share some postmenopausal tips as it relates to lifestyle. The majority of these tips have been culled from the Blue Zone Longevity Lifestyle Guide. So I'm going to talk about 6 of them, and there's many other ways we can increase our longevity, but I think these 6 are pretty much the fundamentals. Movement is critical. Movement doesn't necessarily mean or equal to exercising, but exercising is a part of movement. Movement can mean working in your garden. It can mean raking. It can mean vacuuming or cleaning your house. As long as you're moving, I think that has been one of the key I would say factors of success in the longevity studies, is that majority of these populations who live healthy, long lives, movement has been critical to that success. And as one core element of movement is walking. A daily walk, particularly if you're able to walk in nature or to be outside, is incredibly beneficial on so many levels, not just physically, but also can be emotionally very beneficial, as well as mentally, as we're able to walk away in some instance some stresses that we may be confronting. And again, it's important to recognize that movement, and now increasingly studies are indicating that sedentary lifestyles may actually double the risk of Alzheimer's disease. So it's something to bear in mind, particularly for many of us who have jobs where we are sitting for the majority of the day. Treating or combating depression is also something that's really important, particularly for women. I think we are in a time now where discussion around mental health and depression is become very common, and it's not any, there's no reason why it shouldn't be discussed. And I think if you are feeling like you are feeling signs of depression, it's really critical that you have a conversation with your caregiver, and your physician, I meant to say, your medical care team, to make sure that you do the best you can to help address that issue. Studies have demonstrated that people who have prolonged, or they don't have or they have depression that is not necessarily being treated, may put them at a risk, a higher risk for some forms of dementias. Next slide, please. Well, it goes without saying, smoking is not good for you in any sense of the word, and that includes vaping. So to stop smoking at any time would be a benefit. You don't have to stop smoking necessarily when you were young. You could stop smoking today if you are smoking, and it would still have a positive outcome. The importance of learning a new hobby or to learn a new activity, the documentation has been incredible in terms of the richness of the brain's capacity to be neuroplastic. So this is the opportunity for your brain to actually develop new skills, for the brain to actually reformat itself. We talked a little bit about brain structure and brain format. So anything where you're learning something new, and it could be as simple as knitting or board games, or being able to participate in other sort of activities such as learning a new language, learning a musical instrument. These all contribute to building brain resilience. And the importance of being social, and this has been really hard, and I think what we will see shortly is a number of studies that are going to come as a consequence of the COVID pandemic, of what that meant to be isolated on our mental and health, has been that we are social creatures. And as such, the positive benefits of connecting with, whether it's family or friends, have had demonstrated positive impacts on what they call the 4 happiness hormones, which are serotonin, dopamine, oxytocin, and endorphins. And these increases in these hormones in your body have other benefits, mostly towards your brain health, but they can also be very beneficial for your cardiovascular as well for your digestive health. Next slide, please. So it's been a lot. I've shared a lot with you tonight. I wanted to just now to sort of bring it to all to a close and bring it into some summary. It's important to note that when we look at any sort of condition that we're potentially at risk for, it's to always just take a moment and appreciate that it's potential, and that it is something that we can do by changing potentially our way we eat and our lifestyle to minimize those risks, whether it's for risks of dementias or risks for cardiovascular disease. The other important thing to note is for postmenopausal women, research is indicating that these hormonal changes that many of us have not really appreciated may have relations now, a relationship to our capacity to either prevent or minimize the risks associated with dementias, as it was also cited in the Lancet study. And as a Lancet study clearly indicated, that it is important to make change at any time, and change can be done immediately without much change to your whole life. Small measures, small steps, and some of the small tips that I've shared with you tonight can go a long way. And so just in closing, it is important to remember you are what you eat. It's important to remember that nutrition is more than just the food we put in our bodies. It is the fuel, but it is also the joy of the food we're eating. It's with whom we're eating the food. All this plays an important role in our overall physical, mental, and emotional health. Next slide, please. So in closing, I just want to say again, a tremendous thank you to the team at the Dementia Society of Ottawa and Renfrew County. I also want to say a big thank you to Monique for this opportunity, and I'd be pleased to answer any questions if there are any. And I just leave you with my coordinates, and that's all. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kelly. Every time I listen, every time I've heard your presentation and I've taken the liberty of reading the slides, I think to myself, all right, I'm going grocery shopping, focus on the red peppers and the yellow peppers, and pick up some of those chickpeas. And as you said, there are some adjustments that we can make gradually. We don't have to change everything all at once. So we have an opportunity for all of you to pose questions. Please post your questions in the chat. And soyez à l'aise de poser des questions en français aussi. On peut vous aider avec la traduction. So everyone is commenting what a wonderful presentation it is. I wanted to share that with you, Kelly. You are so engaging. One thing you've been asked is, did Kelly notice any Kelly, notice any improvements or changes to your mom's health when she implemented some of these changes?
Yes, I'll start by there. I think the most important change I noted was water. My mom was not a water drinker, but we worked with her and encouraged her to drink as much water as possible. And we did notice that that there were times where she was a lot more alert after drinking water. And it was just also to help with her elimination. One of the challenges as we age is, as everyone may know on this call, is constipation and the lack of gut motility. So by drinking more water, that also helped mom have a more regular elimination. So water, I think, was the first. I introduced turmeric, which is curcumin, which I didn't have a chance to speak about, but turmeric has, and curcumin in particular, a positive relationship with brain health, into some of her favorite foods, to mixed results. My mother was very observant about what color her egg salad sandwich was, and when she noted it was a bit more yellow, she queried me on it. So, I think it's just being receptive and also understanding what are the foods that they like, and trying to create a taste for them. So herbs and spices, I didn't have a chance to speak about that, but herbs and spices can really accentuate someone who may be suffering from a dementia's disease, because the loss of taste is often a consequence of the process of this disease. And by creating foods that are potentially, textured, that have a crunch, that has a bit of a taste, accentuated taste, that makes it a much more enjoyable process for them as part of their eating. Because having someone with dementia or having Alzheimer's disease, eating becomes sometimes a bit more problematic. And I would also say, remember the foods that they love, and try and make sure that they can have those foods. In my mother's case, like she loved apple crisp. So we would try to make sure just the smell of apple crisp, the taste of apple crisp brought back, I think, for her, a lot of positive memories. I hope that answered the question.
It absolutely did. And thank you for sharing your personal experience. One question that came up is, if we're pressed for time, and many of us always are, what foods can we grab for a quick, healthy meal or snack?
Okay, this is one of my favorite questions. There's I always like to call it the 5 ingredient foods. So I'm thinking about breakfast. A lot of people like oatmeal. I like overnight oats, which is usually 5 ingredients that I put into a glass of mason jar as I'm finishing doing the dishes. And that's some oats, some what I call plant-based milk. If you do like dairy, you can use dairy. I would throw in some cinnamon. I would put in any kind of, if someone's feeling like they need a little more energy, some protein powder. And then I would put stevia or maybe some maple syrup, and I put that in the fridge. And so in the morning, it's done. And all I have to do is maybe throw on some nuts, some seeds, or to put in a sliced banana or some sliced apple. And I've got a very healthy breakfast that pretty much covers all my macronutrients, and it will make me feel pretty full for the rest of the morning. Lunch, I often boil up some eggs. Always have boiled eggs in the fridge. Grab an egg, throw that on some lettuce or some salad, or even make yourself, I take a pita bread. You can take some hummus, and you've got an amazing sandwich ready-made right there for you. And for dinners, I think the one pan meal is the best. So that could be any form of protein. It could be beef, it could be chicken, it could be fish, along with, I would say, 2 types of vegetables. I usually err for dark green vegetables, like maybe Brussels sprouts or asparagus or peas. And then I would do a protein, or not a protein, pardon me, a carbohydrate. I would do maybe sweet potato, or I would do maybe some quinoa. And in 40 minutes, you've got a really nutritious dinner that can serve you for lunch the next day.
Just a question. Thank you for answering that. And everything sounds delicious. I'm thinking I know what I'm going to have for dinner and breakfast, dinner tonight and breakfast tomorrow. If we can find a way to eat the prebiotics and the probiotics, is it okay to take supplements? Is it the same thing?
Well, it is in essence the same thing, but it's always encouraged to take natural food first before supplementation. But I totally support people who want to take supplements that are available in our health food stores for probiotic and prebiotic. They do the same thing. It's the same end result. The nice thing about eating whole foods, though, is you get benefits of other nutrients and minerals and vitamins at the same time.
And if you eat well, then all the items or most of the items that you've suggested, should we still take a multivitamin?
It depends on how you're feeling. And again, I think this is a conversation for your doctor and or your pharmacist. If you're feeling great, there's no need to take a multivitamin. It's just that, you know, the hard part is trying to get all those nutrients into your diet every day. And sometimes you may eat better than other days. And so that's where the multivitamin comes in to provide just that little bit extra supplementation of key minerals and vitamins for you.
Thank you. One question that's come up a couple of times for postmenopausal women, certainly encouraging us to reduce alcohol consumption. Is there a safe level? Or I don't think you'd recommend a certain amount of alcohol, but
Well, I think
just as guidance.
Well, I think the Canada Health Canada came out with a recommended guideline this year, and I think that's where I would probably go to. And I don't have that information right off the top of my head, but I think it may be 1 or 2 drinks of alcohol a week. There's a lot of research that is increasingly demonstrating the damage of alcohol on our brain health, and I think the recommendation from the Health Canada is probably the one to go by. And again, I would have the conversation with your physician, because if you have any other existing health issues, there may also be something to consider whether or not you should be considering to continue to consume alcohol.
Would you recommend purchasing omega-3 eggs or anything of that nature,
Well, I
or
mean, I think
regular eggs?
eating well, like I said, if we can eat organic, I mean, organic is expensive for a lot of people. Adding what is basically omega-3 eggs is they inject omega-3 into the eggs, right? So that's where you're getting your extra omega-3. But eggs are what I would say nature's best foods. They have so many nutrients and benefits as well. They're a lean protein. So one of the things I would recommend is, if you want, and there's nothing wrong with eating omega-3 eggs, but you can also have an omega-3 supplement if that makes it easier for you.
Thank you, Kelly. And somebody wants to follow up on your recipe for the oats. I
Yes.
wanted to know this answer as well. Overnight oats, do you use the kind that normally takes 20 minutes to cook, or what kind should we use?
Well, I would always use, if you can, the iron cut oats, and or what I would call not the instant oatmeal. I would go and buy the bag of you have to take 20 minutes. I think you're correct in the cooking, and use that. Usually I use a half a cup in the jar. I match it with a half a cup of plant-based milk, and then I would add chia seeds. I would add protein powder if I was interested in having more protein. I would put in cinnamon, just because cinnamon is also so positive for heart health. And it's also a nice taste. If you like cinnamon, I would put a teaspoon or maybe half a teaspoon of maple syrup or honey, or stevia if people need a sweetener, and then throw some nuts in. If you have the nuts in the milk overnight, it'll make the nut a little more soft, such as a pecan or a walnut. And then in the morning when you take it out, just dice up some fruit, whatever fruit you like, and away you go.
Thank you so much. You've obviously been following these recommendations for your own nutrition. Have you noticed a difference in your own health by following these
Yes.
tips?
Yes, and you said it well, Monique, at the beginning. It's not easy to change. And to be honest, like when I was in working in my executive positions, I did have a lot of stress and I did partake in what I like to call stress eating. So there was always a donut towards the end of the day to get that sugar rush to get me through to dinner. I usually would snack over dinner if I was still hungry, and then I would have dinner. So, the outcome of that was weight gain, fatigue, inflammation. And so when I started to understand that what I was doing to my body, I slowly started to pull back on some of those behaviors that I had, such as, for example, eating after dinner or having a glass of wine with my dinner every second night or things like that. And so it was gradual. And I would say over a year, those changes are now, that's my new way of approaching food. And I do enjoy things in moderation. I think that's a key word that maybe I didn't repeat, but moderation is important. Like the wonderful thing about the Blue Zone longevity study is when you looked at those 6 zones in the world where the population has a healthy aging and lives very well until their 80s, 90s, even hundreds. One of the key things is they do enjoy moments of celebration where they do eat sweets and they do have wine, but it is certainly not everything, something they do every day. It marks the occasion. And that's how I think we need to kind of eat, is to mark those celebrations.
Thank you so much. Um, so we're eating a healthy diet, or we're doing as much as we can. Should we still take a multivitamin?
Yeah, I think, there's nothing wrong with taking a multivitamin, but if you're feeling like you don't, you have good sleep, everything is fine. It's not necessary. Multivitamin is often given to people who have a lot of stress. They often are experiencing various deficiencies in the vitamins and minerals. It depends on your diet as well, but if you're doing a healthy diet and you're able to capture those minerals and vitamins, it's not necessary to have a multivitamin.
And I'm not going to put you on the spot by recommending a specific brand. I don't think you would like us to do that. It'd be
No,
awkward.
no, thank you.
Can you help us address how you can determine if hormone replacement might be a treatment option for someone?
Yes, well, I think it starts with the conversation with your doctor, especially as you're going through maybe even perimenopause. I think there's never a time too early to have the conversation with your doctor. Talk about the pros and cons of hormone therapy, replacement therapy, and then you'll be informed. I encourage people to, learn as much as they can. And that's the exciting time we're in right now, is that there's tremendous research that's being done on specifically hormone replacement therapy, and as well as it relates to brain health. But it all starts with a conversation with your doctor.
Thank you again, Kelly. Another question based on something you said a little bit earlier. How much turmeric would you recommend per day?
Well, it all depends. That's how I start every question, because we are bio-individual. It depends on exactly what are you eating, and what foods are you serving. And it's whatever you do. If you put turmeric in when you're making potato salad, for example, sometimes people will put a half a teaspoon of turmeric into an egg salad sandwich, or a quarter of a teaspoon. I always say you have to have it with pepper, black pepper, because black pepper is critical to the absorption of turmeric or curcumin in your system. So you can't just ingest curcumin or turmeric on your own. It's usually should be accompanied at least with black pepper. And in certain cuisines around the world, and I'm thinking mostly of Asian, which do use a lot of turmeric, you'll note that they always have black pepper as another ingredient in the recipes.
And someone has posed a question, and I leave it to your discretion to respond. What if your physician is not as open to hormone replacement therapy? Is there someone else we should talk to?
Well, I always think about being as best informed, and you may want to follow up with your physician to get a better appreciation of why they may not be supportive of hormone therapy. I think that's a good conversation to have. And then your takeaway from that conversation may lead you to make decisions on whether or not you should consult with some other people.
Thank you so much, Kelly. Again, I'm excited to try all of your suggestions. As you said, I will do them one at a time, including getting up from not sitting at my computer all day long. I promise to do a little bit more. This is the end of the question period for everyone. Tout le monde, c'est la fin de la question. I have now been asked to ensure that we participate in a survey. We also want to let you know that we will follow up with you by email for a quick follow-up survey, and we'll also send you the link to the recorded portion of this program. We also want to ask you a couple of questions around our future program activities. Oh, they're quicker than I am. Women's Mind Matters webinar live poll. If you could please answer these questions, it really does help inform our future presentations so that we can find amazing speakers such as Kelly. Did you find the information provided today useful? Would you recommend this webinar to a friend? Can I say yes, yes to both as the CEO? Absolument. Which topic would you want us to explore in a future Women's Mind Matter webinar? If you could please answer these questions for us, it would be extremely helpful. Thank you. If you've not had the opportunity to go to our website, I would strongly encourage you to do so. And just as importantly, please share the link to our Dementia Learning Hub. This is the information that is available on our website is critical for all of our learning. I know I have shared it with many people since I've joined the Dementia Society. When I shared with friends that I was leaving my previous employment to join the Dementia Society, they had no idea the amazing resources that were available to help educate ourselves, our friends, our family members. Many of us are caregivers. Many of us will be caregivers, and some of us may be cared for. So it's really important that we are as informed as possible through the website and through presentations such as this evening. And the website is dementiahelp.ca, Dementia Learning Hub. The Dementia Society is only partially funded by Ontario Health to provide core programs, services, education. With community support, we offer free social and recreational programs and education outreach like tonight's webinar. Individual and corporate contributions are always welcome. And of course, your time as a volunteer to help us with education and presentations. There's so much we could all do together. Why? Because here, no one faces dementia alone. Thank you for joining us this evening. Merci beaucoup pour votre participation. Je sais que c'est un beau soleil à l'extérieur, mais vous avez pris le temps de passer du temps avec nous. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. And Kelly, thank you for sharing your knowledge, your expertise, and your personal experience with the Dementia Society. Bonsoir tout le monde. Bonne soirée.